And anytime Caksus is in operation or creating joblessness, amount for Juma in 2023 no massive. Amount for Juma good basa within 2023. Number 3, no say anytime Caksus is in position or in this joblessness. I feel amount for Juma will be say how is in operation or induce joblessness and loss of reputation.
Now, Twitter, Facebook owner Meta, now Amazon, the big tech job cuts continue. The e-commerce giants confirmed it's axing 18,000 jobs this month.
Facebook parent Meta Platforms, which has already cut more than 11,000 jobs, is planning another round of layoffs. That's according
to that announcement from Google this morning. The tech giant planning to slash 12,000 jobs just days after Microsoft made its own cuts.
Boeing is also making job cuts. The company says it will make the cuts mainly in their finance and human resources departments, totaling about 2,000 jobs.
GoDaddy says it will lay off 8% of its workforce worldwide.
As the PC maker Hewlett-Packard, also called HP, has said that it would lay off as many as 6,000 employees over the next 3 years.
We just talked about Google. Well, that is far from the only company here cutting jobs. Online furniture retailer Wayfair laying off over 1,700 workers, 10% of its workforce. Vox Media announcing in a memo to staff that it will cut 7% of its workforce. That's according to multiple reports. More than 54,000 tech jobs have been lost in January alone.
Now, mass layoffs at big firms continue. Entertainment giant Disney has now announced that it will lay off 7,000 employees, which is estimated to be around 3.6% of Disney's global workforce.
Another leading tech giant is laying off its employees in large numbers. Microsoft has announced it will cut 10,000 jobs this year.
Layoffs taking place in Oklahoma's healthcare industry.
In the past week, 2 of Oklahoma City's largest providers, Integris and OU Health, have said they're cutting jobs, and a bunch of them.
On Monday, Dell, which has offices in Round Rock, announced it was letting more than 6,600 people go.
And Disney is looking to find $5.5 billion in cost savings and will be cutting 7,000 jobs to help do so.
Hey, Joe. Good morning. Yeah, so Coinbase is cutting about a fifth of its workforce, blaming the crypto market downturn and broader macro environment. In a blog post just out in the last 20 minutes or so, the crypto exchange says it now plans to cut 950 jobs. It's the second major round of layoffs for Coinbase after slashing 18% of its workforce.
Hewlett-Packard is cutting as many as 6,000 jobs.
Twitter has now laid off dozens of staff from its trust and safety team, which handled the global content.
eBay announcing that it is cutting 500 jobs. That's about 4% of its workforce.
As the British telecoms group Vodafone seeks to rein in costs and revive its lagging performance, the company is now planning to make its biggest round of job cuts in 5 years. Reports say that the company is looking to shed several hundred jobs, most of which located at its London headquarters.
The video conferencing service, Zoom, has become the latest firm to cut about 1,300 jobs, or approximately 15% of its workforce.
Dell Technologies will cut about 6,650 jobs, shrinking its global workforce by around 5%. The pace of layoffs in the tech sector is continuing unabated. The latest in the series is the e-commerce firm eBay, which has fired 500 employees globally, which represents 4% of its total workforce.
Big tech layoffs rolling in. Spotify, the latest to tighten its belt, with plans to cut 6% of its employees.
Also developing today, Salesforce will be laying off 10% of its staff in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Salesforce rising more than 3% today as investors cheer mass layoffs. The software company cutting around 8,000 jobs, or 10%, in the latest headcount cut in the tech sector, said CEO Mark Benioff, quote,
JP Morgan Chase, it has cut hundreds of mortgage employees' jobs.
Also cutting 19% of its workforce. Listen,
IBM is the latest tech giant to do so. The company announced it will cut about 3,900 jobs, mainly in its IT services segment. We're seeing shares down about 2% here in the pre-market. Surprised to see.
There is, by the way, another tech giant that cut jobs, and that was SAP, 3,000 jobs, it says.
It is leading to massive job losses now. Reports say chipmaker Intel is planning a major reduction in headcount.
it can likely number in thousands. According to reports, layoffs could be announced as early as this month, and some of Intel's divisions, including sales and marketing group, could see cuts, affecting about 20% of staff. And as we spoke about layoffs, Micron, the semiconductor maker, it is going for layoffs now, citing a nagging glut in semiconductor market. Chipmaker Micron, it has forecast a much steeper than expected second quarter loss. It said it will lay off 10% of its workforce.
Yahoo is going through a major overhaul and says it plans to lay off more than 20% of its total workforce. The cuts, part of a major restructuring of the company's ad tech division, will impact nearly 50% of Yahoo's employees in that division by the end of this year, including nearly 1,000 employees this week.
Philips has joined the league of companies that are going for job cuts to maintain profitability. The Dutch health tech firm would scrap 6,000 jobs, and while half of the job cuts will be made this year.
Also new at 11, San Francisco's based Lyft plans to cut more than 1,200 jobs, which is about 30% of the workforce.
Nokia today announcing a plan to cut as many as 14,000 jobs, which is around 16% of their workforce.
Yes, so the reporters gave it a breakdown. It said up to 11,000 staff within Switzerland, and then 25,000 globally as well. And so, of course, that's 30% of the almost 30% of the 125,000 combined headcount at the two banks, and much more than the 9,000 that Credit Suisse was embarking on before the takeover.
UK telecoms company BT Group has announced that it plans to shed up to 55,000 jobs.
Let's get to another big story, and that is McDonald's, the company temporarily closing its U.S. offices to start the week as it plans to lay off part of its workforce.
TELUS has announced job cuts after a sharp drop in its quarterly net income. The Vancouver-based telecommunications company says the cuts includes 4,000 workers at its main business and another 2,000 at TELUS International.
A behemoth overlooking the London skyline, British Telecoms has long been an immovable part of the British economy, but the traditional architecture of the world's oldest communications company is to be dismantled. 40% of its workforce shed within the next 7 years at the latest, much of it replaced by AI.
We have some breaking business news. Big job cuts at Bell Media. The company is cutting 1,300 jobs, closing several radio stations and television bureaus.
Now, accounting giant EY has joined rivals KPMG, McKinsey and Accenture to announce job cuts. Just days after it called off plans to break up its auditing and consulting divisions, media reports say that the company will axe 3,000 jobs in the United States, citing overcapacity in various parts of the company.
IT major Accenture is set to cut 2.5% workforce. It would lead to 19,000 job losses globally.
Morgan Stanley plans to slash at least 3,000 positions by the end of June. That comes on the heels of news of Citigroup and Bank of America making similar surgical cuts.
Company in Spartanburg, meantime, is laying off workers for the second time in 9 months.
Kohler Company says there will no longer be a second shift at their plant. 7 News.
This is a major development today. The website BuzzFeed News is closing down.
Surprise to many people, the company CEO says it will lay off 15% of its total staff across the company. He said BuzzFeed will focus its news coverage on its subsidiary site, HuffPo.
A rough day on Wall Street for Minnesota-based 3M. Stocks dropped as the company announced it's laying off 1,100 people from its headquarters in Maplewood.
Well, layoffs are one of the biggest indicators of a looming recession.
It was just last week 3M announced 600 layoffs locally as part of a larger restructuring plan, and on Tuesday that number grew with the company announcing a total of 1,100 layoffs from its headquarters in Maplewood. That includes the 600 from last week and another 500 remote workers from out of state.
PayPal becomes the latest Bay Area tech firm to announce layoffs. The San Jose-based company says it will trim about 7% of its total workforce, or about 2,000 full-time workers. PayPal says
a fresh round of massive layoffs hit the Canadian media industry today. Bell Canada announces cutting 1,300 positions and closing or selling 9 radio stations.
Noble just became the latest company to lay off its workers. The company's CEO says about 5,000 employees will be fired in the coming weeks.
Now, however, another shift is happening. LinkedIn just laid off nearly 700 employees. Qualcomm is planning to cut more than 1,200 jobs.
After an 8-year hiring spree, almost doubling Victoria's annual wage bill, cuts are coming.
I don't understand how a Labor government can purport to be a Labor government when he wants to throw 5,000 people on the scrap heap.
Home in the Midlands, we have continuing coverage for you tonight on the news about Wells Fargo planning to lay off hundreds of workers in Richland County.
First Alert 4 first told you last night at 10, Centene is downsizing, planning to lay off about 2,000 employees.
Scotiabank has had a presence in the Caribbean for more than 130 years. And today, the Canadian bank, one of this country's biggest, revealed it is slashing its workforce. CTV's Heather Butts with the impact.
Big layoffs are coming to an iconic factory. The St. Bernard's Soap Company opened over 125 years ago.
And tonight, workers are telling us their biggest client is pulling out. WCPO 9 News reporter Andrew Rowan spoke with employees.
Once we came to our team meeting, that's when they said that they wanted to go ahead and they were giving us 60 days.
60 days is all that's left for many workers at the iconic St. Bernard Soap Company.
The morale is not here anymore. We don't have a morale here.
In a letter to employees, the HR manager writes the company will terminate at least 153 employees, 120 of them union represented.
More than 400 layoffs will happen in the Austin area this summer. A notice from the Texas Workforce Commission says 2 companies in Williamson County and 1 in Bastrop are letting people go.
On 4 separate occasions this year, General Motors has fired a very large number of its staff. In fact, General Motors has fired more staff this year than Twitter fired. It's been revealed within the last 24 hours that GM has fired an additional 800 staff after firing hundreds of engineers only a few days ago. But this is just another one of a number of large-scale firings at General Motors this year. Hello, my friends.
John Ford has just announced that it is laying off approximately 600 workers at its Michigan assembly plant. That is the plant where one of the UAW strikes is taking place.
Now, in a move to counteract a noticeable decline in revenue growth, LinkedIn it's announced a significant workforce reduction. The social media network for professionals owned by Microsoft will cut 668 employees across its engineering, talent and finance teams. This marks the second round of job cuts this year for the company, affecting more than 3% of its 20,000-strong staff. LinkedIn trimmed its workforce in May by eliminating about 716 positions within its sales, operations and support departments. The technology sector, grappling with an uncertain outlook, has shed a staggering 141,516 jobs in the first half of this year. Stark contrast to the 6,000 job losses in the previous year. LinkedIn generates its income primarily through advertising sales and subscriptions. In its fourth quarter of the 2023 fiscal year, the platform reported a 5% increase in revenue compared to a 10% increase in the previous quarter.
If you haven't been paying attention, this year, 2023, has been a terrible year when it comes to the number of layoffs. In fact, more than 250,000 workers lost their jobs, and many of them never saw it coming.
So West Asia is on a spending spree, but the world's leading companies are cutting costs. This has been the year of layoffs. Thousands of workers across sectors have lost their jobs, and appraisals have not brought much cheer.
Yes, don't get me wrong. Every year, Biano Ajuma Tini Gugu, meaning, any news. But 2023, a month for Bashiro Majuma, a BC da. Anytime, Caksus in operation, the negative aspect in say, or create joblessness. Ajuma Begu Guafi, we the whole world. People will lose their jobs because Ketu will make sure people become jobless.